Hello and welcome to episode 10, Confessions of a Gen Xtivist. I'm Kelly Green, and these are my true crime stories. On the last episode, we left off in Craik. I'm just winding up my career with Boiling Frog. We had retrofit a house, wrapped it in straw bales, went off grid, installed a wood stove, had hot water heating. We were organizing events in the town of Craik, various numbers of film festivals. I got involved with the Saskatchewan Organic Directorate and produced a series of videos featuring Elmer Laird from the Back to the Farm Research Foundation up near Davidson. He's since passed. May he rest in peace. And also, while we were there, I wanted to show you this. Max, you'd asked if I'd made mention of it on the program, and I did not. I'd forgotten. So this is a film that was made by Zoot Pictures called Eco Home Adventures, and it broadcast on CBC National, so our national television broadcaster, and it featured myself and Bridget from Boiling Frog, as well as a couple of other families. There was Tom and Carol Ann, and featuring Naomi Hunter, current leader of the Saskatchewan Green Party. So it's essentially, and that's Naomi's yurt, kind of cute, and there's me up on top. I don't know if you could see that all right. Anyways, I was doing something with the climbing up, check on the solar panels or something. Those were pretty cool units. You might remember from the last episode, we started with one solar panel. We made it up to 4 whole solar panels. And a friend of ours, farmer Jim Nodge, a brilliant guy, super supportive of the work that we did. And he created that iron frame, that steel frame for our solar panels, and had this very clever little setup with a pole coming down from that setup, and then it came inside the house at a 90-degree angle. He figured it out, get it inside the house, cut a hole in the wall, and had an old steering wheel, an old racing car steering wheel that he put on there. So throughout the day, from inside the house, we could turn our solar panels to follow the sun. It was quite an ingenious little thing, very, 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 very fun. But anyways, I'm just about wrapping up on my Craik adventures, on my Boiling Frog adventures. I've called this episode Breaking Dad, because I was going to call it Breaking Good, where I leave behind my life of activism to get a real job, but that seemed kind of boring. And also, I've become a dad in this next episode, Max, in this episode coming up. So I thought, well, fun little play on words, we'll call it Breaking Dad. We'll see how well that goes over. Now, also, before I get into the story, I just want to make note, I'm wearing my Greenpeace Canada Say No to Tar Sands t-shirt in commemoration of myself in the storytelling process getting back to Alberta, where I'm going to from Craik. But before I do, I told you about the Eco Home Adventures. I wanted to also tell you really quickly that while I was living in Craik, I got invited to participate in this educational book that was put together, Taking the Next Steps, and I'm happy and proud to report that I'm a co-author of Chapter 4, titled Peaks and Valleys on the Prairies. So that's pretty cool, something where I got my name in print as a co-author. And to go back even further, a couple of episodes, this is the book that I was featured in. Do I still have the... Oh, there I am. Profile, Kelly Reinhardt. And there's Bridget, my partner with Boiling Frog, and we're standing outside of Kelt's Pub in the Junction, Toronto, Dundas, and Kiel, where we would host regular screenings. So this is a interesting little write-up of myself. You'll note the last name is different than what it is now. I changed my name to Kelly Green right around the time I was wrapping up Boiling Frog and wrapping up my adventures in Craik. And the other day, Max, you had asked me, well, why did you change your name? And basically it was because I knew I was moving from one phase of my life into another. I was going to be a new dad. I wasn't particularly attached to that last name anyways. My father, whose name it was, he had legally changed his name some years before that, and it was an adopted name that he was adopted into that name. So there wasn't really a whole lot holding on to that. And because I was moving away from a life dedicated solely towards, trying to be an activist and figure out how to do that and going into more of a straight life, I thought it was a clearer delineation to just, to change my name, clean slate, clean start, and away we go. But before I did leave Craik, I had mentioned that we mounted the Earth Day Film Festival. Now that would have been April of 2010. So Max, you're 3 months away from coming on the scene, which was quite exciting. Excellent little film festival. A couple of other gigs that we did in Craik. I'm together with your mom now, Deanna, and I volunteered to do a public speaking event down in Regina. So me and your mom went down there, and it was a lunchtime event, like a business luncheon or something, and we were to speak about the Craik Sustainable Living Project and essentially everything that's going on. Now, Craik, it was fairly famous, fairly well known. It was on the highway, or it is on the highway in between Saskatoon and Regina, about the halfway point. And you can see the Eco Village, and people know about it. It's got a lot of coverage. Like I said, it's even had like a lot of print coverage, TV coverage, and this feature-length television documentary about Craik and the Eco Home Adventures. That certainly helped raise the profile about the town. So I go down to make this public speech, this little presentation about Craik, and Max, your mom was breastfeeding at the time, breastfeeding you. So this is early, I guess. Yeah, it's the summer of 2010, and in my speech, I'm talking about Craik being the tale of, tale of the town between two cities. But in my Freudian slip, I call it the tale of the town between two titties. got a fair amount of laughter from the crowd. I guess it was a good icebreaker. Threw me completely off my speech, but it was kind of fun. The next little bit of public speaking I did at University of Alberta Camrose campus, I believe, and that was, again, around sustainability, around Craik, and we were invited out there. So we traveled from Craik to Camrose. Max, I believe you were with us at that time as well. Did some visiting in the city with some family, and then back to Craik. And the last job that I did as an environmentalist, as an activist in Craik, was working on the Saskatchewan Green Directory. So it was an internet and telephone directory of all the ecologically conscious organizations and businesses in the province of Saskatchewan. So I was contracted to work on that, to build up that directory, which was kind of fun. But at the end of the day, income was kind of few and far between. Stressful living out in Craik as an outspoken environmentalist, even though they had all these cool things happening like the Craik Sustainable Living Project and the Solar Fair every year and the Eco Center, which was an amazing world-class building that unfortunately burnt down. All of these excellent projects, we're still talking about a small Canadian prairie farming town. I mean, it's not a bastion of progressiveness. Now, when you factor that in with my, I guess, extra outspoken personality with regards to the environment and social justice, it was a clash, and there was a lot of conflicts that came as a result of me living there. And we were right on Main Street too, so we would, all day long, people would see what we were doing, and some of the locals, even on their morning outings, they just drive by really slowly and stare. It was kind of unnerving. During the production of this film, the local townsfolk, it's covered in the film, the local townsfolk put on a meeting downtown at the Legion Hall, which was right across the street from our house, and it was ostensibly how to beautify downtown or something to that effect. But basically, it was the whole meeting, the premise of the whole meeting was to gang up on Bridget and Kelly, because right across the street from the Legion where our house was, we had 6 lots actually, and one of those lots we had a giant trailer load of logs that were dropped off that were going to be our firewood for the winter, and we were going to parse it out, and we did parse it out to various other people that were using wood for wood heat. Now, the locals, they didn't like that, and it was I guess the log that broke the camel's back. So they organized this town hall meeting to gang up on us, and it was quite sad, and also a little bit funny in retrospect. So if you ever get a chance to see Eco Home Adventures and that documentary that they put together, I'm not sure if you can see the whole thing online, but I'll try and leave a link to the company and to a preview. At least it's fairly entertaining. Gives a good little glimpse into life in Craik 10 years ago. 10 years ago? 15 years ago now? So anyways, times are tough in Craik, getting work and earning a living for my new family. Max, I've got you as a new baby, Deanna, my new wife-to-be, her 2 children from a previous marriage, your brother and sister, Emma and Adam. And as a small new family, we needed some income, and that led me on my decision to uproot from Craik, return to Edmonton, basically my hometown, and to seek out work, to get a real job finally. So it's like I joked with my farmer friend Jim Nodge. It was like I'd kind of taken retirement early for the first 20 or so years of my adult life, running around the country and around the world and doing a lot of different activism, different odd jobs and different things. And now it's time to settle down and get a real job and support a family. So that was the plan, and I returned to Edmonton, and I end up lucking into landing a job with the city of Edmonton as a public bus driver. Amazing job to score. I really loved that job. It wasn't so activisty, but for having to get a regular job, it was top notch, really good pay, really good benefits, working for the city, being a civil servant, helping people out every single day on the bus, an alternative form of transportation to the single automobile, so slightly better for the environment. All of these things matched up really nice. It wasn't long before your mom and your brother and sister and yourself followed me out to Edmonton. So the fall of 2011 maybe, or 2011. At any rate, we're now starting a life in Edmonton. It seemed fairly normal. I wasn't doing a lot of activism. We got involved with a couple of rallies for and against genetically modified organisms. So there was that. I was basically concentrating on my work, and you guys were concentrating on being kids, and we were concentrating on being a family. Your mom was working at the superstore. It was all quite normal existence. Over time, I got more involved with my union in Edmonton for the bus drivers, ATU 569. The president at the time was attempting to mount a fight against privatization of Edmonton Transit, or partial privatization. He organized a campaign. I think it was called Poo Poo the P3. It was a lame amount. No disrespect to you, Stu. You just didn't have the organizing capacity. It was a lame attempt to stop the privatization of what became the new LRT line in Edmonton. So I got a little bit involved with that. As time went by, I became a shop steward. I got more involved with the union politics and the union activism. It came around again that we started organizing against privatization of buses and of the new LRT system. So that campaign was still ongoing. I got very involved. It was quite refreshing to remember that I had all these organizational activist skills, and we put together some rallies. And there was, at one point, someone had come to the union meeting with a T-shirt, just a random T-shirt that they had, one of these Keep Calm T-shirts. They're like, "Wow, do you like my new T-shirt?" I'm like, "Wow, that's really cool. Where did you get that?" They said, "Well, my son, he makes T-shirts." I'm like, "Wow, that's so cool, because we could use a bunch of T-shirts for our union for next week's rally." And as it turned out, we were able to make a fast turnaround, get a whole bunch of t-shirts printed. And at City Hall the following week, you see just dozens of people with these black t-shirts and our slogan on the front, something against the privatization of transit. And yeah, it was quite cool. And our big giant union logo on the back. It was pretty impressive. However, at that time, doing that activism, well, it wasn't that great. I guess it took away a lot from the relationship, a lot from the family. Things kind of broke down. Your mom and I ended up splitting up. Things went sour within the union itself and within my organizing, and I was kind of on the outs in that regard. So things kind of came to a bit of a screeching halt there. I picked up the mantle again, getting involved doing some extracurricular stuff, but this time it was to become the president of my union. So I mounted a campaign, back in 2019, I think, to become the president. I came in second in a not so close two-person race, but it was a good learning experience, and it was good to put it out there and to lose. These things happen. 2018, 2019. It wasn't too long afterwards that I ran for the Green Party of Canada. So this was a bit more high profile of an election, the federal election. Put my name forward. We had some campaign events, including a really nice event over here at Strathern Hall. And I ran against the current MP for Edmonton Strathcona, Heather McPherson. Formidable candidate to lose to. So I guess I don't feel so bad in that regard. And she is a lefty of sorts, right? She's with the NDP, so that's kind of cool. It was also a little bit flattering at our one and only public debate that we'd had, public live debate that we had. And I'm seated beside her, and you can see it on the old video. I'm giving my presentation to the crowd, and she's looking over and trying to steal some ideas from my notes. Or at least that's what I'd like to think anyways. She's just being a smart, crafty lawyer and trying to get every advantage that she can. So good on her. Now, activism. So it wasn't going so well for me in the police union, in the transit union, after losing my bid to become president of the union. I was kind of on the outs. And then it wasn't too long afterwards that the dreaded SARS-CoV-2 virus appeared upon the scene globally. And that created a whole set of unique situations. Using the knowledge that I had as an activist and using the knowledge that I'm gaining from the media, it wasn't hard to determine that this was a fastly progressing situation with regards to the pandemic. In fact, I had removed you, taken you out of school a day before the Edmonton Public Schools said, yeah, we're shutting down the schools. And I'm sure that everybody remembers the entire planet shut down, and there was all kinds of controversy about that. I took it an extra step further. I was on leave at the time. I was on a separate medical leave when the pandemic had broken out. And I immediately started campaigning in two directions. One was to offer mutual aid and support to our fellow workers and people in our community. And the other, through the union, was to organize the bus drivers and the unions, and preferably the administrations, the cities that are hiring and running these bus services, to do more to protect us against this virus that was spreading. And it was a fast-moving, fast-developing situation, as some of you may remember. Just to recap, I think the global pandemic was declared on March the 13th of 2020, and within 5.5 weeks, I was dismissed from my job at Edmonton Transit Service. Not because I was refusing a vaccine, or not because I was refusing to comply with any of the pandemic protocols. No, actually, I was dismissed because I refused to remove posts from my public social media that were encouraging people to do more to protect themselves in the pandemic. In fact, I'd even called for a national, no, a North American wildcat strike. So I put out the call through various groups online, various union affiliated organizations and sharing groups, that we needed a wildcat strike because our employers were not taking it seriously enough. They weren't giving us even the basic protections of masks at the time. There was very little being done for protection in that regard. And in fact, there wasn't even. It was still early in the pandemic. We didn't really have all of the rules set in place, even with regards to masking. I think early on it was told, well, we got to keep our social distancing and wash your hands and wear a mask if you can. But that not even at the beginning, because I don't even think there was enough masks that if everyone wanted one, we could have one. So masking wasn't that first level of communication that went out there. However, it was something that I was communicating. And then I think it was on April Fool's, or right around the beginning of April, so the international pandemic is not even, it's 2.5, 3 weeks old. A gentleman out of Detroit, a bus driver, he dies. And he dies of the COVID. And this is only days after posting a public video on his Facebook. He's on a few minute break on his bus, and he comes off the bus, and you can see he's sweating and he's coughing and he's not feeling well. Sure enough, he had the COVID and he died. Now this was Jason Hargrove. Hope I get that right. And I'm going to leave a link in the description to a song that my friend David Rovics wrote because of that. At any rate, Mr. Hargrove, Jason, he dies from the COVID. He's working in Detroit as a bus driver. They're talking about internally, some of their drivers, they're talking about they're doing some kind of job action, right, to get their employers to do something, to do more to protect their bus drivers. And I took it that one step further and just simply called for a wildcat strike. Look, I was of the opinion that if this virus is as bad as they say it is, and they were saying is bad, you could see on the news that China had completely shut down. They're literally, they got these fogger machines and they're disinfecting the outside, right? So it's so bad in their mind where the virus originated that they're disinfecting the outside, and they're already into lockdowns, and it was already fairly well established protocol in Asia that people would wear masks in situations like this. So it's a fairly serious situation. I took the threat level, to like level 10, right? And I took it upon myself to try and educate people on the best way to protect themselves. I included the hierarchy of, is it an inverted pyramid? Hierarchy needs with regards to occupational health and safety. So the best way to avoid a hazard is to, just simply remove the hazard. So knowing that we couldn't remove the hazard because it was everywhere, that we had to take other steps. So we had to bring in some engineered solutions, right? That's going to involve filtering the air, cleaning the air, personal protective equipment. This is like the very last thing on the list, right? So, gloves, hand sanitizers, masks, obviously, these types of things. So I was just trying to promote these types of things. In the back and forth before I got fired, I did take down and I retracted my call for the North American wildcat strike. I admit that was maybe a little bit too far, and I should back off on that. But I certainly was not going to remove any posts that talked about the hierarchy of controls and how to protect oneself in the workplace. This is common knowledge. It should be common knowledge. It's in every occupational health and safety book. We were given occupational health and safety training on the job, plus through the union. It's something that every employer has to follow, and every employee is obligated to follow as well. So and when my employer, the city of Edmonton, they asked me to remove all of these different social media posts, and I was in violation of our agreement with regards to social media participation, I said, no, I'm not going to do that, because this information is true and this information is fine, and there's nothing wrong in my mind for sharing that information. They had a different perspective, and because I was on the outs with my union, the current union president, who I'd tried to beat in the previous union election only a few months earlier, he wasn't on my side. The other upper echelon union people they were sided within, they weren't on my side. Nobody was going to offer me any sort of support with regards to fighting the city on this. I was essentially left alone on that, and they wanted to get rid of me. At the end of the day, I didn't put up much of a fight. When they fired me, I kind of accepted it. After the fact, I had some encouragement to fight that through various means. I didn't. I kind of regret that. Driving the bus was a fantastic job, right? Great money, great benefits. It was kind of dumb. I should have really, in retrospect, just zipped up my mouth, faced the risk that everyone else was taking, get into the bus, do my job, and, carry on. But that wasn't the only thing that was weighing on me with regards to working for the city, driving the buses. I had a many-year campaign where I was trying to clean up our environment in the bus with regards to rogue chemical fumes and diesel exhaust fumes that would get into the bus. There were other issues with regards to the heating and the cooling and the operating of those systems within the buses, and the seemingly lack of priority on behalf of the city to address those issues. And then I had a long-standing campaign with regards to the bus seats themselves, right, where I had experienced what I believed was an injury with regards to these seats. I'd literally uncovered the seat to demonstrate and to show that there was, where there should have been support factory built into this chair, it had been removed, and that seat it had nothing to hold it up, and it just kept sinking in. And as the seat was sinking in under the weight of generally heavier than normal human beings driving those buses all the time, the seat would sink, and it would sink down onto two support bars of the frame of that bus seat. Sorry about that. So the two support bars, and those would end up right, lined up just on the outside of my hip, where it was causing the problem. Now, despite uncovering these issues and campaigning on these issues, I couldn't get any traction with the city. I couldn't get any traction with the union. Had multiple meetings with various people up and down the chain. Couldn't get anything resolved on this issue, except for the city did offer to buy me a bum pillow. So, whoop-de-freaking-do. Thanks, guys. Long story short, my activism kind of screwed me over in the end. With regards to working, I had a great job as a civil servant. Yes, there were some problems, and yes, there were some hazards, and yes, there were some risks that weren't being addressed, and yes, I had some issues, and I was on the outside with regards to the union and all of these different things. But at the end of the day, I probably should have kept my mouth shut, been a little bit more disciplined in that regard, and kept my job. But alas, what are you going to do? I didn't. I had to move on from there. Move on from that experience driving the bus and being that union activist. It took a little while to transition, but I ended up working with my friend Angela Bischoff at the Ontario Coalition. Oh my God. Wow. Talk about brain farts. I talked about that before, maybe being a symptom, long-standing symptom of having the COVID, like a long COVID kind of symptom that I'm reading a lot about, or it might be just throwback from tear gas exposure 23 years ago, or it might even just be simply, age catching up to me. Those things happen. But man, why can't I remember Ontario Clean Air Alliance? There we go, the Ontario Clean Air Alliance. I was doing some social media work for them, but before I did that, I was unemployed, looking for work. I took a course online on social media management, and then offered to volunteer helping out the Ontario Holy cow, what's wrong with my brain? At any rate, I ended up helping out Angela. She hires me on, so I end up working for her for a good year and a half doing her social media management. I was able to bring in former activist friends and colleagues, Lynn X of the Edmonton Small Press Association. She did a lot of my graphic arts when I was doing the Ontario oh my gosh. When I was doing a lot of the design work for that social media job. And my very, very good friend, James T. Warbington, superstar video editor and filmmaker and musician and man about town. And just, I love that guy so much. He ended up joining Team Green, also doing a lot of the graphics and helping out in that regard. Brilliant, brilliant guy. Love to have him. He's since moved on. Max, James, he did the logo and did the early editing and gave you 2 cameras, I think. And he's always been super generous at supporting us in all the work that we've done. James also edited a lovely little tribute video for our dear departed friend, Tucker Gomberg. I think I should leave a link for that in the description down below as well. It was pretty good. Where am I? Where am I? I think I'm wrapping up on the first 20, let's call it the first 20 years of my activism. Because the last couple of years, what was I doing? I wasn't really in an activist role, but it was a good job. I felt pretty decent about it. I was driving a delivery truck for Bissell Thrift Center, a great little organization. They're the longest running charity in Edmonton, I believe. Do a lot of really great work for homeless folks and for the poor in the city and for new immigrants and helping people get jobs. And they do a lot of really great work. But unfortunately, I guess we weren't a fit. They fired me. And now, as I produce this podcast series, where are we at? We're October of 2024. I'm looking for work. I'm also doing this series and thinking about, what else? I'm feeling good. Maybe I want to keep doing some production stuff. I'm toying around with the idea of getting back into producing my variety program, the Garden Variety Show. Another name that I'm just going to leave it there. That's it. That's the end of Confessions of a Gen Xtivist. True crime stories. Oh, what I might do and what came up early on in the series and talking with other people is bring on some guests. So I would be very interested. I've got one guest lined up already, my good friend Brent Thoma. I hope to interview him this week, but he's not feeling well. Maybe next week we can bring him on and be perfect timing because I've wrapped up my story. And now I just want to connect with some fellow Gen Xtivists that were involved either directly with my particular stories or with the timeline of these last 23 years and share some of their stories and their perspectives so that we can have a little bit of a living memory, which will be good for us and our friends and family, but it might offer a little bit of helpful knowledge and wisdom or motivation or something. There might be something here in these last 10 hours or so of Confessions of a Gen Xtivist of value to people. If not, I hope my primary goal of producing this for my son Maxwell. Max, I hope that you've been able to get something decent out of this. If nothing else, at least a little bit of a glimpse into some of the things that your Papsy has done all of these years without you. Oh, with you, I almost forgot the little bit of activism that we did here in the city together with regards to climate marches. Max, you filmed a march. Boy, I think it was a Fridays for Future march where all you kids at Victoria skipped school and we connected at Churchill Square. You shot that march, so that was you shot that whole thing. I think did James edit it or I edited it or maybe you edited it? It was one of the first videos on your own YouTube channel way back. And then a few months later, we ended up shooting an event and attending a giant climate march when the world famous Greta Thunberg came to Edmonton. There was 15,000 people marching for climate, went down to the legislature. It was a beautiful, glorious thing. I think shortly thereafter, the city of Edmonton declared a climate emergency. The federal government declared a climate emergency and then bought the TMX pipeline. Nice words. Nice activism. Max, I hope you keep it up in whatever you're doing in life. Keep a good heart. Try and always do the right thing. And know that I love you. I do.